Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm going to call the Richmond City Council meeting for Monday, December 12th, 2022 to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Any discussion, errors, or omissions? Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Madam Clerk, any agenda additions or deletions?
None, Your Worship.
All right, may I have a motion to resolve into the committee of the whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Now, we do have one delegate who is online. This is in connection with item 17, the soil use matter, Daniel Lemon-Hua. Sir, do you want to turn on your video and unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Brody. My apologies, my video isn't working tonight. As part of our delegation, we're going to have Dr. Stephen Ramsey, another QP that is on the project, speak on behalf of the application. Dr. Ramsey, are you here?
He's not in the audience and he's not online, is he? Oh, he just connected apparently. All right, we'll go to Dr. Stephen Ramsey. Then if you could turn on your video and introduce yourself. And you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. I gotta start the video. The video is having some problems for some reason. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'll speak the matter. Okay, good evening, Mayor and councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of Mr. Avatar Tandy, the owner of the property located at 22040 River Road, which is the subject of a soil placement application to the City of Richmond that you are considering this evening. The purpose of the fill on this property is to deal with a persistent groundwater issue and to restore the property to productive blueberry cultivation. Currently, blueberry cultivation has been frustrated. My name is Dr. Stephen Ramsey. I'm a professional engineer, and I have provided opinion on matters related to geotechnical engineering, hydrology, and drainage for this project. I'm here this evening with Dr. Daniel Lemon-Hua, a professional agrologist with Madrone Environmental, who has provided professional opinions related to the farm plan, agrology, and soil placement for the project. We have attended several meetings of committees of Richmond City Council related to this application over the past few years, and there are a number of questions that have been raised, which we'd like to briefly address. The primary cause of the loss of productivity of the Tandy Farm is a groundwater issue, presumably induced by the adjacent BK Ranch cranberry operation, which has a higher hydraulic potential than the Tandy property and has caused a rise in the groundwater level. I think it's important to note that this is not a drainage issue and is not related to the flooding of the adjacent ditch or any other land. This issue cannot be dealt with by drainage, pumping, or diking. The remedy to this problem is filling to achieve an appropriate separation from the water table. Pumping is not a solution. Comparisons have been made with cranberry farming, which pumps vast quantities of water during harvesting season. However, this pumping is intermittent and is for a different purpose. Analysis of pumping options shows that this is not feasible with perhaps prohibitive capital and operating costs. Drainage is not a solution. Drainage levels are fixed by the adjacent ditches and the City of Richmond infrastructure, and it will require extensive and expensive changes to the City of Richmond drainage infrastructure to implement this strategy. Diking is also not a solution because the problem is in the groundwater levels and not drainage. The sole purpose of this fill placement is to restore the productive capacity of the Tandy Farm exclusively for blueberry cultivation. Mr. Tandy has agreed with the City of Richmond to a bond to ensure implementation of the farm plan for this purpose. There is an environmentally sensitive area on the Tandy property and adjacent to the fill site. No filling or activity of any kind is proposed or allowed in the ESA under our plans. Stripping and stockpiling of topsoil, including the peat soil, has been recommended by Madrone's professional agrologists and is best practice. This is a practice supported by the external reviewer, Mr. Bruce McTavish, and is a practice that is supported by the ALC based on previous soil management plans that have been reviewed and accepted by the Commission. And there is anticipation that peat soils will in fact decompose when placed atop imported soil. However, the structure of the peat soils will promote moisture and nutrient retention and provide a more suitable medium for blueberry plant growth. Trucking in the topsoil from off-site is not recommended due to the additional trucking required, and repurposing of the native soil is best practice. Following approval of the project, Madrone will provide professional soil source and importation monitoring services for Mr. Tandy. And as part of these standard services, we'll be requiring that source soils be sampled and collected to rule out contamination and to ensure that the textural properties of the soils are of proper agricultural suitability. Trucking logs will be required for submission that detail load counts, source sites, and will be pre-approved. So on behalf of Mr. Tandy, we respectfully request the support of Council to approve this fill application this evening and to allow the Tandy property to be returned to productive blueberry cultivation. And myself and Dr. Lamenois will continue to be on the Zoom and make ourselves available if there are any questions that people have later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Day.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Ramsey. I understand that the ditch that's on the side of the property is City of Richmond property, and that we put in the drainage ditch and I guess the diking that's on the edge. So you don't feel that that could be upgraded to solve the problem?
No, we've analyzed that in some detail. The history of that ditch is actually somewhat murky. I think it goes back to 1982, if my memory is correct. There is, in fact, no way to effectively manage that ditch to lower the water in a way that would allow the land to be returned to productive blueberry cultivation. And the problem there is that the ditch is actually part of the water management scheme for the BK Ranch and is connected to the drainage infrastructure of the City of Richmond. And our analysis of that just indicates that that is not a feasible solution.
Okay, if you are allowed to bring in the 545 truckloads of soil, would that then not create drainage problems for the people, the land around this property?
The amount of rain which falls on this property is obviously not going to be changed by the soil. And we have done a detailed drainage analysis, which has been submitted for review to the Engineering Department of City of Richmond, which supports the drainage design that we proposed. If you add soil, the additional soil actually has an increased ability to absorb and store the rainwater. So in actual fact, the total amount of rainwater that will be released is identical before and after. The rate at which that stormwater rainwater will be released is actually reduced because of this additional storage capacity of the soil.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else here who wishes to delegate on an item on the agenda to council? Anyone else? May I have a motion to rise and report? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Brings us to the consent agenda, and the highlights are as follows. We have the committee minutes, the New Capstan Village Park Concept Plan, the South Arm Community Park Playground Contribution, the award of a contract for telecommunication services, an application for a new liquor primary license at Birdie Indoor Golf Center at 4280 number 3 Road, Unit 120, and an application to amend a food primary liquor license for Remix Restaurant and Bar at 8300 Capstan Way, Unit 1008. We have the appointment of the acting corporate officer. We have the budgets. Some of the budgets are on the consent agenda. The 2023 operating and capital budgets for the public library, the proposed capital budget, the one-time expenditures, and finally we have the land use applications for first reading They go to public hearing January 23rd, 2023 for 11431 Williams Road, rezoning from single detached RS1E to compact single detached RC2 zone. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? Moved and seconded. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a couple items that I'd like to make a comment on. As liaison to the South Arm Community Center, it's imperative that I say something in supporting of them. I'll support everything on the consent agenda. I'm very happy to see this playground go forward, and very thankful and watch the South Arm Board of Directors squeeze things together to come up with $200,000 to contribute to the park. And I believe that's one of the larger amounts that's come in by a community association. And they've had worked with staff to have a climbing tower and a zip line and something that's different, but also unique to South Arm. As I think those of you that have been to South Arm know that there's already a bit of a tower down there and a mound and some few things. So it fits right into what the neighborhood is. I just have a quick question of staff. Are we sure we've got enough money? And if it goes over, South Arm is not required to come up with any more? And we'll take it out of general revenue or wherever?
Your worship to Councillor McNulty. The project already has several approved capital accounts. And the approximate sum of capital is approximately $838,000. So the contribution from the association really just add to that with additional features in the playground.
So we'll have a first-class playground and park. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, the other thing, item, Your Worship, is the Capstan Village Park, and I want to thank park staff. You know, what have we opened? 4 parks this year. They've all been different and unique, and I want to commend the park staff for whoever's in the designing area. This one is also unique, very natural. We at committee the other night voted to remove the dog off leash area and replace with a natural area. And I'm very happy we did that, because the focus in this park is not only family friendly, but and where it's located, but ecological rich and natural focused and inclusive. And I think this is going to be a standalone, unique park by itself. Again, I think I'd be quite excited to see it, Your Worship, when it's finished. To me, it's very important that we do this. So kudos to Parks Department, and I'd be wondering what their next challenge is to come up with whatever. So, and the other comment I wanted to make, Your Worship, is in our libraries. You know, we've done, our library staff and board have done a yo person's job again, and coming forward to allow us to have the quality and service of the library that not many communities are used to. And I always look at it this way: we have 5 libraries, we don't just have one, we have satellites. And the library has always been the center of the community. Many of us can remember when we had the library in the old Safeway store at 3 in Westminster Highway. And we had a first-class library there. We were members of the Fraser Valley Library Commission. We're at best in the province. The only thing in that report, and I challenge it back to staff, is I'd like to see more for Hamilton. We've got a growing community out in Hamilton, and we need to address library services. They're still getting what I got in 1970 at Seafair with the bookmobile that came by, and well, books came by once a week, and you were able to go up on and trade books back and forth, and they came to us. And we're basically taking books out there. I'd like to see, hopefully with the increase in population out there, a vision for better library services. I won't say what at the moment, Your Worship. And the only other comment I want to make, Your Worship, I hope everybody is going to support the capital budget. It's a pay-as-you-go budget. We spoke finance on it, and much is said. But I think we have to remind ourselves it's going to cost more in the long run if we don't address the issues of today, and to continue on repairing and getting ahead on what we do. We've been quite fortunate. I mentioned at the last committee meeting, Your Worship, this is one of the larger capital budgets, and it's aggressive. And in order to continue, given the economy and what's out there right now, the fact that we spend to get the economy and inflation down, you have to spend a little bit of money. But I'm not looking at it in terms of just spending money because of that. I'm looking at it at this budget because it's improving our quality of life in Richmond. And I'm very happy to see it. And I just hope we'll have unanimous approval on the budgets tonight, Your Worship. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll speak to just 6 items. I'll be in support of everything on the consent agenda. First off, I was chair at the last planning meeting, and I'll just further a little bit more on Parks meeting. Further what Councillor McNulty mentioned. So the Capstan Village Park, we were able to hear from, I'd say, 3 of the most active public members who know this area really well. They came to present to committee, and through that, and I think everyone around the table who spoke said they have dogs and love dogs. But regardless, the recommendation was to remove that park use. It is quite a small park in the 1.34 acre range. And it doesn't mean that people can't take their dog there and walk the trails. It's just that there wouldn't be a large area allocated for just dog use. And because this was a unique park location choice that came out of the former council in the term asking for the developer, Polygon Talisman, to consider an area of higher value, and they responded. And I think that will provide this council the knowledge of that ability, that when we ask for better, we can get it. And so I'm very pleased about that recommendation going forward tonight. This next one is item number 8, which is the South Arm Community Park Playground. As was mentioned, some of these additions, thanks to the Community Association, and again, be that known for other community associations where your money can go to add to some existing parks. So that will put this one in kind of the range of the Terra Nova Rural Park and the Garden City Community Park. Item number 9, the contract for telecommunications services. A little disappointing that we don't have living wage employer options for this highly lucrative business. But regardless, staff were able to investigate and determine that most staff are paid above that living wage standard, not all. And they do have kind of a performance standard technique to increase pay. Moving on to item number 13, the library. Again, I'm one of the users of or my daughter is the main user in the family, of the Hamilton Community Center Library station, which 50 years ago, that was the technology. I'd say it still works really well. Every time we take our daughter there, she always finds books of interest. And I know the librarian staff there takes comments and considers what members of the public tell them. At the Hamilton AGM for the Community Association the other week, there was library staff there that, again, were taking notes and were responding to some of those improvements and requests where possible. Moving on to item number 14, the proposed capital budget. I echo the support for more Hamilton or East Richmond facilities. Perhaps that rec center will come. I know there is a staff referral on sports facility upgrades, and maybe part of that new facility or upgrade or expansion, there could be a library component to that. But unfortunately, in the 5-year range, it's not there yet. Next one in that same item number, the proposed capital budget, I did note that aging park infrastructure wasn't included for this year, but if you look at the next 4 years, there is funding for it, about $500,000 each year. So It will come, but it's also part of a study that's going on right now, so staff have kind of a timeline for upgrades, so supporting that. Also note in the list of capital budget items, the two that involve habitat enhancements or ecological enhancements are delayed. The habitat enhancement for Terra Nova Slough looks like the funding is 5 years away. And the drainage network, kind of relating to the item that we just heard from the delegate, the drainage network ecological enhancement, whenever there's a project that infringes on riparian management areas or environmental sensitive areas, we need to have that habitat enhancement bank where we can then have places to build and expand the services that nature provides. So yeah, unfortunately, they're not in this year's capital budget, but obviously they're on the books for 2 years to come. And then finally, item number 15, the one-time expenditures. I did comment to staff about that 34 city center trees that will go, and public need to be aware that those are quite significant trees in their neighborhood that will be removed because they're causing damage. Location they were put, there's just a lot of in-ground services, and part of that budget of that item is for the in-ground infrastructure repairs and patching things up once we haul out these large root systems. So with that, I'll support everything on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I'll also be supporting everything on the consent agenda. I just want to speak and ask a question of staff on number 8, the South Arm Community Park Playground contribution. It's great that South Arm Community Association is contributing $200,000, but I've actually had a lot of people ask me, why aren't we saving the castle? And I was wondering if you could just explain why it is we have to take out that, well, iconic castle.
To the chair, your worship, to Councillor Day, yes, we can. Through the design process, we obviously did inventory and study of the existing infrastructure, and the castle wasn't meeting today's safety standard. So we obviously worry about kids falling down and getting hurt. So that's one of the major reasons why it cannot stay, unfortunately. Instead, what the staff has done is we try to incorporate some castle element to the rest of the playground. So, some kind of a nostalgia design element.
Okay, well, that's great. That's good for people to know. Thank you very much. Number 9 is the award of the telecommunications services contract. We went with TELUS for a significant amount of money, $3.7 million, because Shaw just simply didn't offer a complete bid. So good work for staff for working through that issue. I did have a question of staff on 10 and 11. These are 2 liquor licenses for businesses in the downtown core, basically. And I'm concerned, because we don't know these operators, they're brand new. Will we be doing a review in 1 year so we can make sure that the businesses are being operated according to the rules that we have in Richmond?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, business license staff can be doing a review. We also conduct periodic reviews of liquor primary establishments along with our colleagues in the RCMP and the LCRB to ensure that they're operating as good corporate citizens.
I think it's great we're doing entertainment in the downtown core because it's desperately needed. I just want to make sure that we keep an eye on them. So thank you very much for missing that. But number 13 is the 2023 operating budget, and for anyone who's interested, that's on page 143 in our binder, and it's $10.8 million, and the list is really good. It breaks it down. Infrastructure, which includes everything from flood protection, water, and sewer, is 47 projects for $60 million, and then the list goes down, and parks
What
is
budget are you referring to?
Oh, I'm on the wrong
You said
one.
the operating budget.
The operating budget.
Oh, sorry, let's go item number 13. Sorry about that, I apologize. Yeah. So, okay, first of all, the budget for the library is number 13, I apologize. And that's just $10.8 million to run all those libraries, and it's just 4.3% more than we approved last year. And item 14, the proposed capital budget, sorry about the mix-up there. The list of all the projects is on page 143 for the public, and again, $60 million for everything from sanitary sewer to flood protection, and $25 million for building programs, and working our way down the list, we're getting parks, $9 million for 9 projects. So those are all exciting projects that I look forward to them being developed down the road. One-time expenditures is $1.2 million, and on page 299, we have a list of those expenses, and it really breaks it down, and I think that if you read the report, you'll find that all of the projects were looked at with a fine-tooth comb, and only the ones that really made sense are being approved by this budget. And the last one is item 16, which is just a rezoning on Williams Road, and we're going to get 2 new suites there, so that should help renters in the future. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody.
Okay, Councillor Au.
Your Worship, I'm going to support everything on the consent agenda, but I have some comments on the 3 items. The first one is item number 7, the Capstan Village Park concept plan. I wholeheartedly support the plan, especially, this is going to be a family-friendly neighborhood park and a nature-focused playground. I think this is what we need in the city center. And I would like to see that, this will go well, and we should have less man-made elements in this park. So I'm glad to see this is moving on. And the next item I would like to comment on is item 14, the proposed capital budget. I support everything being recommended by staff, but in particular, I'm very interested in two groups. The first one is the infrastructure programs from page CNCL 188 to 193. I think those are very important projects in terms of protecting our city. Those are the drainage and the disaster mitigation programs. I think, having seen what happened last year in other places, I think it's only reasonable and natural for us to pay more attention to protecting our city in terms of flood protection and other things. And this is prevention-oriented. So instead of waiting for a disaster happen, and then we spend money trying to rectify the situation, I think money is better spent on prevention. The second group I'm very interested in is the information technology programs from page 254 to 259. I think these are very important investments as well if the city wants truly to become a smart city. And all these projects are making this city more efficient and or more modernized. In particular, I want to ask staff to give further information on the e-pen and permits on CNCL 255. I want staff to explain why this is important and what will be the next step. I understand that this is only the first step to do the preparation work. So what is in the mind of the staff further down the road?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Au. E-plans is a system that we currently use to some degree in context of receiving plan materials, drawings, architectural diagrams from developers predominantly. As part of the what we call our permanent optimization project, which Council approved last year, to enhance our ability now for intake of permits and to go completely digital, e-plans we're going to now fully integrate to that solution as well. So our whole planning permitting system is going to be comprised of a new portal-based intake system, and there are permits that are going to be relatively simple. We are looking to have the first phase of that project go out mid next year, in Q2. The idea is that we'll take most over-the-counter permits will be electronically processed and in most cases delivered immediately through the portal. There are more complex permits though, development applications that require review, that have to go through different stages of review, and in many cases there's exchange of materials. And so the developers and the property owners have to submit and provide materials. E-plan is that system now that enables them to easily upload and to deliver those materials securely that get associated to their permit applications. And so this project is to do the enhancements in E-plan and to integrate it fully into our whole new permitting system.
So in your estimates, so from now to the time that we have a mature system to implement this, how long will it take?
Our first phase, we're like that's what at this point projecting will be in the second quarter of next year, which will be launching the system, getting the new permitting system online, which will then handle what we call the over-the-counter simple permits. And then phase 2, we are still scoping, but we're hoping by first quarter of the following year to have everything fully done.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Yes, I think we heard a lot from the consumers, developers, saying that when they try to apply for something, it takes forever, and also very often they do not where about is their application. So somehow they felt that it's get lost. So I think this system would improve the performance, not only for us, I think for the consumers as well.
Through your worship to Councillor Al, also in the context, staff are taking the experiences that we've learned through my business. And so effectively, it's the same approach, same technology platforms, and we've seen a tremendous transformation in the delivery of business licenses and how now our customers want to now apply for and get business licenses. And so that's been transformational. We believe the same will happen with permitting.
Very good. I like the word transformational. Yes. And actually, a point I want to make is that for many of the capital budgets items, I want us to spend more and faster on some worthwhile projects instead of delaying them. Because I think by now we have inflation eroding our reserves because we are taking 1 or 2% or even 3% the most out of our investment. However, the inflation rate is 3%, 5%, 8%. I think actually, we are losing our time and the value of our reserve, if we delay our projects and prolong it. So I hope that in the future, staff can come up with, more worthwhile projects that we should do sooner than later. I also want to comment on item 15, which is the one-time expenditure. Again, support everything on the staff recommendation. Actually, I'm interested in the 2 items not being recommended, which is on page. Let me see. Okay, page CNCL 300. This is item 4 and 5 on the not recommended list. And again, I think, these small items, dog license e-buildings, and also park permits customer portal. Again, I think if we are moving towards a smart city, those are the things that we need to do. If not now, I think in the future, we still have to do it. But I understand that as my experience in the Finance Committee meeting last time, there's no appetite to really support this. So I'm not going to make an amendment today, but I would note that something like this is going to come forward anyway in the future. So it's important for us in the sense that we can provide also better consumer service. So with that, I support everything on the consent agenda. On the consent agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting everything on tonight's consent agenda. Just a couple of things I'd like to talk about. The library budget, it's over $10 million, but I think it's something that many of us use, many of us appreciate. I know my family and I, we love getting books, having the hard copy of books, but I also remember too that we went on vacation some years back and we forgot to bring books to read the kids' stories that evening, and we were able just to download from our library. We were able to download books for the kids, and we were able to go through Robert Munch, whatever else. And so the availability of different kinds of books. And then, I think a lot of people do prefer to read a hard copy book with their children, but the ability to introduce them to the ability to look up a word. So you find a word in the book that you're online looking at, you can press it and find the meaning for it, and then you can dig a little deeper. So you can introduce your kids to the positive side of digital. We are also able to borrow some video games from the library for the Nintendo. So I don't know if people know that you can do that, but if you've seen the price of Nintendo video games, you might appreciate being able to go and borrow them and see if the kids actually like them before you invest in them, or just keep switching them out at the library and sharing with other people. I loved that we were able to go to McLean Park and see the book walk this year. I know the library's been working really hard to do all kinds of different things and to bring books to people in all kinds of different ways. So I personally feel like we're getting a lot of value, and I hope everybody else also sees that same value in all the programs and ways that the community has been able to come together through different ways and means at the library. Then I'd also like to talk about the capital budget. I'm not going to say too much about it, but I will say that I really appreciate some of the work we've done. When we look at our building, that we're putting, 26 million or something into our building fund. We saw it last year here at City Hall where we were fixing exterior of the building, we're still continuing to do that. We're taking care of our own buildings so that they'll last longer, so that they'll have a good long life, so that we're not tearing down buildings after a short little while and then trying to redo them because we're not looking after them. We are looking after our infrastructure, and that's why we're putting so much money into this. Personally, I'm a biker, and I'd love to see our bike infrastructure program move way faster. I know one reason, though, that we're moving at the pace we are is our ability to get external funding. And if we look at that CNCL 156, we can see that half of the multi-use path on Steveston Highway is covered by external funding, and almost all the rest is then paid for by DCCs. So those are the development cost charges that developers pay for when they add new homes into the city of Richmond. And so, and then the other restriction, of course, is time and the time it takes to design and then build each project. And I know that for many people, trying to get trades or anything else has been a challenge. You know, Councillor Au did talk about the price of things going up, the inflation rates, but part of that is the ability to be able to find workers. And so, you know, we're all in this crunch together, we're all working on it together, and so we have to pace these things out. So as much as I'd like to just way ahead on the biking program, I'm gonna sit back for now, but I'm really loving this new multi-use path from Railway to Steveston Highway, because if anyone's gone up the number 2 road path, you know that it's a bike path to nowhere that dead ends at Steveston Highway. And so it'll be good to have it start connecting to things. We can all get out there with our kids, with our friends, and be biking around. Just a little bit more on the DCCs though. These are the costs levied to new developments as they're built. And these go to pay for things like our park upgrades. The park upgrade that Councillor McNulty was talking about at South Arm Park. I know that old metal airplane was there when I was a kid, and I think they're finally getting rid of it, but it's exciting to see these parks develop. And, you know, I have fond memories of growing up in the parks. I know lots of people have fond memories of them as well, and fond memories of taking their kids and being at these special parks where the kids are able to play and experience. And if we also look, we see that Steveston Park is on the budget for next year, and 1.58 million of that, so the lion's share of that is actually going to come from developer contributions. And so, you know, I think we've done a careful job of looking at our budget, taxing the taxpayer, and also making sure that growth pays for growth. So the new people coming in, the new buildings that are being built by developers and whoever else, they're contributing to these DCCs, and that's what's helping us grow and redevelop our parks and build more park spaces that we can all get together in and have those memories in. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. I'll be supporting the consent agenda as well. And a couple quick comments. We've heard most of it. With the Capstan Park, that was a very good park to go through with. And I think the change that was made at committee, removing the dog park in particular, was good, because it's a very interesting park with a natural habitat, and it's a small park at about 1.3 acres, I think. So I thought that was a good decision by committee, and it's going to be a beautiful park in that area of town. With the South Arm Community Park, as has been mentioned, I think that's an incredible contribution for a community association to be able to make. And for the public, you know, you should realize that they're making that contribution with money that they've raised through their own programming and funds. So it's significant, and the climbing tower and the zip line are going to be really, really popular. So that's significant. With the library budget, I think it's worth noting that budgets are tough for everybody nowadays, and equally, if not more, difficult for libraries because of the last few years and the challenging times that everybody's having, in particular libraries, as they move to slightly different models, as has been described. But for the same level of service for the library, they're looking at 3.82% just to maintain their level of service. And so some of the regulatory costs that have been thrust upon them that they have absolutely no choice in, and they must pay because it's regulatory, and it's something that the city faces as well, brings it up to 4.32. And everybody in the public, I know staff are aware and council is, that the consumer price index for us in this area is pegged at about 3.98. and that's probably on the low side, quite frankly. So I think the library board and library staff deserve a lot of credit for being able to put that budget together and keep services that are important for all the residents in Richmond, as we've all described. Moving on to the capital budget. First, I do want to, again, thank staff for a lot of hard work and a very thorough budget. We hear it a lot that, oh, we'd like to spend more money here or more money there, but you can't do that all the time. So priorities do have to be determined and adhered to. We've got about 83 capital projects that are taking up, close to $120 million alone. And $20 million of that, for the public's information, is going to flood protection. So it all fits underneath what the city has developed as a long-term financial management strategy. And there's a number of guiding principles that you can look up to see how those decisions are made and what they're based on. And just as some round numbers, the city has about $3.8 billion in assets and about $2.5 billion in net assets. So this budget goes towards, as we've heard, repairing and maintaining old infrastructure like fire hall number 5, roads, drainage. And when you look at the pie chart on page 6 of the report in our package, I think about 65% is going directly to building and construction and repairs for buildings. So it's money well spent. And just in case anybody is wondering if we, can't say no, or we just spend money on everything that comes down the pipe, but that's not the case. There's almost $12 million in different things not being funded, and some very worthwhile things too. One of the things not being funded is the park in Burkeville, and I'm sure that its time will come, but that, according to the report, dates back to the 70s. And so Burkeville is a pretty isolated little community, and I look forward to seeing what happens with that in future years. So that's the capital budget, and I think I will just make a quick comment on the one-time expenditures. That's on page 295, and it's about $1.121 million, and it's covering 6 items, and that leaves a balance of about $13 million in that fund. But just so the public realizes that the money in that fund is being used, I think, very wisely for one-time expenditures, and that decreases the amount of money you have to look at in terms of a tax increase, and it's used for one-time expenditures. So I think that's a very wise use of that money. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. It takes us to the 2 items that have been taken off the consent agenda. They both come from the General Purposes Committee meeting. The first one is the soil use fill application. The committee recommendation is that the soil use for placement of fill application submitted by Avtar Thandi, proposing to deposit soil for the purpose of improving the agricultural capability of the property located at 22040 River Road, be authorized for referral to the ALC, for the ALC to review and determine the merits of the proposal from an agricultural perspective, as the applicant has satisfied all of the city's current reporting requirements, and I would so move.
I'll second it.
So that's moved and that's seconded. I'll be interested to hear what the objection to this is. About an acre of fill that someone wants. It's really quite a process if someone wants to go through it. Certainly not something you would do if you thought you had any choice in the matter. The report outlines the various steps that are being taken to make sure that the source of the soil is appropriate and it's appropriately deposited, and all the procedures and the reporting requirements are being met. There's a bond requirement, and all that is so that they can improve the quality of the soil so they can grow blueberries. I think it's quite straightforward, and I'll support it. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. I have a few comments. Maybe you'll find interesting, because I do oppose it, and I'll share some of the reasons. I know this property very well. There's a city right-of-way adjacent to it, and I frequent it many times. I'm also aware of going by this property in the kind of end of that long 4-month drought that we just had. As well, I was a day or two after the atmospheric rivers in November 2021 was standing there, and that's where most of the photos, it seems, in the package came from, that flooded day. So a couple things from the delegation this earlier today. The phrase of better practices, and it might be best practice now to scrape the peat and put it aside and sprinkle it back on top and it'll all die off, but it might hold some water for you on top of all your hard-packed fill that you brought in. But the best practices are changing, and even in Richmond, we have our jewel of a agricultural parcel at the Garden City Lands where they've changed their practice to now keep the peat intact and farm on top of it. I would call for a referral on this, waiting for Agricultural Land Commission to give us an update. It has apparently been called for from the Food Security Agriculture Advisory Committee to have them review and determine what is the best practice when it comes to peat soils, which are some of the best in the world at holding on to carbon and keeping it locked in the ground and not adding more to the atmosphere, not through burning it, although other places in the world, they dig up peat and burn it because it's such a great fuel, because it's a great way to break carbon-hydrogen bonds and generate electricity. But here, we're just going to let it die without getting electricity on the surface of these farms. Another thing I found interesting was that there's no drainage solution or pumping solution available. Well, I look at the great work we've done around the city to provide drainage and pump stations to keep Richmond dry. So clearly there is some technological advancements that are available. I also heard the fact that the ditch beside this property on the west side is an impediment to preventing the flooding, the waterlogged soils. But if you dig a ditch deeper, and you let that water flow into the larger canal that's on the south side of River Road, and you connect that to a pump station like there is just a few hundred meters down the way, we could pump more of that water out when it does get higher. So I don't, I'm not satisfied with the idea that this is the only way to go forward, to take a property that historically has been about producing food. And yes, they want to grow more blueberries, but there is also a lot of that on the market. If this really was for a more diverse crops, maybe it'd be a bit more likely to support it. But if we're just going back to doing cranberry, but this time we'll have to pump more water in because water's not retaining on this site and not close to the water table anymore, that connection will be permanently broken. I also oppose the bond rates. Yeah, if you count the $38,000 for the city and the $8,000 gift and the maybe $14,000 ALC bond, that's about $60,000. And in the report, staff said it's going to be worth about $100,000 just in tipping fees. So get the tipping fees and you can pay off your bond and still have money in the bank. Unfortunately, that's not the trend, but I'd love to see the trend where this type of proposal leads to actual agricultural production for residents of Richmond. I've yet to see that occur. And lastly, I'll just point out that the environmental sensitive area and riparian management area that is pointed out in the report as having there will be no impact to those areas. Again, not clear how that came to be when you're putting fill on a portion of it, because you're allowed, because it's ALR, so you can do it. So that seems like an impact. And any edge effect has an impact on environmentally sensitive area. In the water, just on the other side of this right away, I've seen families of river otters. Believe it or not, they come through all the way down the canals and feed on fish and other things in the water body just to the south of this. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Drainage improvement should be first, and I would like to refer this back to staff till we hear from the ALC on best practices of the future. Thank you.
So are you moving referral?
Yes.
Is there a seconder? Okay. On referral, anyone speaking? Okay, we'll call the question on referral. All those in favor? Those opposed? So that is defeated with Councillors Al, McNulty, Lou, Hobbs, Heed, and the mayor opposed. Okay, we're back to Councillor McNulty on the main motion.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak to this, but I just want to ask staff a question, if I could, Your Worship. What's on the table tonight is the placement of fill, not to manage the property. A number of years ago, we had a gentleman by the name of Kavanaugh on Steveston Highway, or Westminster Highway, who we put through the ringer to set up some principles and guidelines of fill for that, with best practices, et cetera, monitoring, et cetera. Through the worship to you, did these people go through that checklist of Kavanaugh guidelines, as I keep referring to it, and pass?
Your Worship, to Councillor McNulty, yes, and we've also add on every year best practices. The City of Richmond's due diligence when it comes to soil placement is, if not the top, amongst the top in the entire province. It supersedes the requirements of the ALC, and those best practices of due diligence based on the Kavanaugh precedent will be applied in this case.
And the ALC did accept Mr. Kavanaugh's proposal at the time, did not monitor it and followed it through to add to those guidelines?
Your Worship, to Councillor McNulty, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that it is important that we look at every application for placing fill on our agricultural land. I don't think it's cut and dry and just simple. I've seen this council turn down applications on River Road before. I do know that the applicant actually, like in their report, they did originally say they wanted to do some more diverse crops. They were going to possibly do some greenhouses and vegetables and whatnot. But in the meeting, when he said he might, Mr. Thandi said he might do blueberries again, he might do raspberries, the FSAC asked that he come up with a farm plan, so he just decided he'll just stick with blueberries in his plan, but he might do more diverse crops, and that's absolutely his right to grow whatever he wants to grow. That being said, with regards to River Road, the FSAC has also asked that the staff come up with some sort of a coordinated strategy on how to deal with that whole road, because that road has had a lot more illegal fill operations than at any other area of the city. So many properties are way higher than others. It's just this real up and down, all up down there, and a lot of land's been destroyed. So it would be good to do a coordinated effort of drainage, like I think that will get looked at when we do the dike upgrades, and hopefully that will help with what the people who actually do want to farm are going through on that road. And in the past, you know, as this council knows, we have had applications for soil fill that the properties ended up not being farmed. They ended up having contaminated soil put on them, and they were flipped and not ever farmed. And with regards to the Kavanaugh project, it was such a huge application. It was over 200,000 cubic meters, I believe. So it's been taking years to complete that, and that's a 35-acre site, and it started in 2016, and it's still, we still have yet to see the agricultural benefits of it because it's not actively being farmed. There's some trees planted on it. So it would be nice to see, it would be good if we could see the final result of some of these applications actually resulting in some profitable farming. But the reason why a lot of landowners will choose a fill application is because it's just a lot more affordable than the pumping and the drainage, because that would just be all cost in, whereas with the fill, you do receive the tipping fees, which help fund the project. And I'm supportive of that because it makes it viable. But at the same time, we have to be really careful about monitoring these. It just takes one truckload of some bad material, and we can't always be watching everything. Stuff happens overnight in this city all the time that we miss. So I know that there are some things in the works, some soil tracker developers in technology developers of that type of technology that are in Richmond that need support to move forward with what they want to do to help us. So we need to move forward with that type of initiative to really track the soil. And we do also need to, separately from this application, because this application's gone through all what they need to go through, and I think the ALC should get to look at it, and the ALC has turned things down that we've missed before, so that's fine. But going forward, if the referral from what I understand is the referral from the FSAC actually didn't result in any letter to the ALC, so there's nothing happening with regards to that. So I think it's up to this council to say that they want to confer with the ALC and discuss evolving best practices when it comes to peat soil management, because we had such a success on the Garden City lands of doing it that way. And yeah, I just think we do need to look at that. So I hope we can do that referral ourselves down the road, but I'll support the application.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll be supporting the application. But I have to say, I do get a little leery when I hear best practices thrown around, because it does get thrown around quite a bit, although I'm sure we're doing the best practice that is possible. But I think it's a legitimate thing for us to have a look at our practice when it comes to peat versus scraping it off versus covering it, because I'm certainly no expert in it, but even I've read things that argue, for one way or the other. And so I wouldn't mind at some point down the road having a closer look at that, because we are going to get more applications for fill as time goes by. This is going to continue to happen. I'm down in that area of town a couple times a week, and I've talked to a couple farmers, and I know that they're going to be looking at doing that as well. So I agree, we have to be very careful with how we do it, because once the land is ruined with the wrong kind of soil or a lot of debris or something else, it's usually gone for a long time, if not forever. So I agree with being careful. I agree with having a look at how we deal with peat, whether we scrape it off or whether we cover it. I've heard arguments both ways, and they all sound very convincing. But in this case, I will be supporting this particular application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Yes, Your Worship. I understand that there's always a concern that a property owner like this one would get benefit from collecting the tipping fees. And on page CNCL 324, in the second last paragraph, staff mentioned that in this case, the owner may generate tipping fees in excess of 100,000 from the applicant. However, the income derived will be offset by the costs. So I want to ask staff, how did you come up with this conclusion? What calculations did you make so that you see the gain and the cost being offset?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, the applicant needs to submit a farm plan in which they write the scope of what they think they're going to be able to farm and over what period of time. I should also add, it's important to note that the city requires quite a few qualified professional reports, and those are not cheap. So that also factors into the overall cost of the project.
Okay, so this is not an item for the owner to make big money?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, the owner could conceivably make a profit from this project. It depends on market conditions, and it's difficult for staff to foresee what the outcome will be 4 years, 5 years from now in terms of the market.
Okay, good, thank you.
Councillor Day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I'm really disappointed that council voted against referring this back because of a number of reasons. I don't know if you recall, but about 2017, there was a very similar situation to this one, also in North Richmond, whereby the owner wanted to bring in also a meter or two of soil. And Councillor Steves and I voted against it because, well, Councillor Steves said that the land should be adapted to the crops, not the crops adapted to the land. And it was just a real simple thing. Like if you can't grow blueberries, then grow what you can grow. And we have a serviceable ditch on the one side of this property that, if was working properly, may just end up creating an excellent area to grow vegetables. Maybe they can't grow blueberries there, but that's okay. Land changes over time. Well, that other project that Councillor Steves and I voted against and lost the vote, then went to the Agricultural Land Commission, who rejected it and said, no, we're not going to allow that to be a dump site for soil. So I'm worried that this one is the same as that one. And that's why I was really hoping that the referral motion would have passed so we could take a better look at it. So I have no choice in good conscience is to follow what previously has happened, and my history and what I've learned from Councillor Steve says that, you know, this might not be the answer to this property. Now, I believe Councillor Galanders has brought up a very good point. It could be that if we did a proper analysis of the diking system and the water table in all of the farmland, especially in that area, which is problematic, we may discover that adding 3 feet of fill is the way to go. Or we may discover it's not. But what we're doing is putting the cart before the horse, and I will not be supporting it at this time. If I had more information, I might, but I certainly can't tonight because it could be there's better options out there.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting the motion here, but I just want to make a few comments because I'm sitting here listening to this, and we sat through this through committee. We've heard experts in the field talk to us. We heard experts tonight talk to us. I have all confidence in the city staff that has put this together, that has brought this forward to us, that's recommended that we move in this particular direction. I think we're trying to manage what this person, this farmer, is trying to grow. Imagine telling him that, guess what, you can't grow blueberries, but you can grow turnips or something like that. It's just, it's so frustrating to me. And I think instead of us listening to the expert, listening to the evidence that's presented, we're getting buried in our ideology. So, you know, from my point of view, and it's just my opinion, if we're talking about food sustainability, if we're talking about producing foods, we're talking about supporting our farmers, when they bring something like this, that the due diligence has been done and continues to be done on the bond, etc. You know, if in fact we doubt this person, and I have no reason to believe we doubt the legitimacy of this application coming forward to our staff, then I could, you know, certainly ask for some more information. But I'm just, you know, actually dumbfounded why we wouldn't wholeheartedly support something like this. But from my position, I'm wholeheartedly supporting something like this. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, really in support of that analysis that we've just heard, you have to go back to square one and say, what are we being asked to resolve here? And we're being asked, they want to be authorized for referral to the ALC to review and determine the merits of the proposal from an agricultural perspective. And then we're saying, based on the applicant has satisfied all of the city's current reporting requirements. Is this an appropriate use of the land? It's farmland, they want to farm it. All our requirements are satisfied as far as I'm concerned. And the ALC, who are, after all, the experts in the field, are going to have the final say. And I presume that in 2017, it was rejected because of various agricultural aspects. So I'm certainly going to be supporting this application. And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillors Day and Wolf opposed. That brings us to the Finance Committee matter, the operating budget. And I'll just read it out quickly. It's the 2023 proposed operating budget. And the recommendation from Finance Committee, which is made up of all of council, is that we go with option 2 for a total of 5.89% as approved, as outlined below. First of all, we have the same level of service increase, and that's 3.22% increase. The emerging organizational additional levels, as set out in attachments 8 and 9, and that would give us another 0.01%. No, sorry, 0.28% plus we added, we added 0.01%. That's included in the 0.28%. C would be a transfer to reserves for the tax increase of 1%. That's for facilities. The next one is senior level government and other government agency increases, which is 1.51%. Previously approved commitments, that's a tax increase of 0.09%. Operating budget impacts totaling 1.168 million. That's an increase of 0.44%, and then we're going to decrease the amount of tax by using the rate stabilization account to, which is a surplus, to give us 0.65% reduction. And finally, that the 2023 operating budget is approved be included in the consolidated 5-year financial plan. So, and I would so move. I just want to make a few comments on that because I kind of went through the various components, but the general public needs to bear in mind that when we're talking about budgets for the city, there's really a series of different budgets. There's the utility budget, which we dealt with a month ago. On this agenda, though it went through in the consent agenda, we have the library budget, capital budget, the one-time expenditures. That money for one-time expenditures comes out of our previous surplus. And then you have the operating budget, and there's a number of constituent parts which I read out. But it is worth just looking at the various parts of this operating budget. So under our long-term financial management strategy, we said we're only going for the same level of service, we'll increase it by the level of the cost of living having risen. So we've given that 3.22%, and with inflation around 7 or 8%, you can think that actually that could be a much higher figure. Then we have additional levels. So we take, the first part is what do we already have? Now what do we want to add to it? And that adds 0.28%. The 1% is then transferred to reserves for facilities. We've got a long list of wants and needs for the next 5 or 10 years, and those needs are going to come out of the reserves for the facilities, and that's why we actually borrowed the money for the Stevenson Community Center and Branch Library. Then senior level government and other government agency increases, those are imposed on us for 1.5%. There were some previous commitments that we went through in previous meetings of 0.09. And then with the capital budget, you have the money for the capital budget to build something, but there's also, with many of the items, there's an operating budget impact because you've got to now maintain that further asset. And then what we did, one of the criticisms that any council gets is that we have a surplus. I mean, we can't budget for a deficit, so we have to have a balanced budget, which means you have to have confidence that you've budgeted at least as much as you need. Well, that then usually gives us some kind of a surplus. And the constant refrain that we hear is, why aren't you using that surplus to decrease the amount of our taxes in the future because you have charged us too much in the past? Well, we had to in the past, but we've got this reserve called the stabilization account. And so we're using it to decrease the amount of the taxes this year to 0.65%. So that's a basic breakdown of the situation. I doubt that there's anybody on this council that likes this kind of a tax increase of 5.88%. But I can tell you that from my analysis and my experience, I believe that it is a sound budget and that it is needed, even though I may not particularly like it. And in anticipation of some of the comments that are going to be made about additional levels, and I'm referring to attachment 9, which is council page 452. In there, you'll see let's see, now you'll see there's two different, there's a Community Social Development Planner 2 for poverty reduction and an improved position for the Community Social Development Social Equity Coordinator. So those are two full-time positions. What hasn't been recommended, but it's on the list of requests, but they haven't been recommended, are two other positions for basically for the poverty area. And my suggestion is that the easiest way to have taxes get out of hand is to keep adding bodies, keep adding and adding and adding. And so I think over the years, and this year included, I think our staff have been very careful in what they recommend in terms of additional bodies. And so with those two bodies having been recommended, and one of the two that is not recommended, but it is filled by an auxiliary planning assistant, so there is someone there filling that position. I believe we've gone as far as we should be going prudently. So I'm going to be supporting this budget. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just speak briefly on what I voted against, which is in this operating budget before us today, and what I hope to make still some changes to it tonight. So first off, at Finance Committee, I was very supportive of what was in the full package, and we were given some options. I liked, I think the best summary table is table 11 on our page 417. Kind of breaks the three options, and we're today discussing option 2 in the middle there. I just highlighted in the yellow section about the estimated operating budget impact from things like the Capstan Community Center or the Steveston Community Center and Library. So those aren't built yet. They don't need the operating budget. The staff are not going to be doing that work. So if we're asking for a budget increase, I would say we would make sure we're funding things that are needed now. And if these large facilities, which have been approved and will take years to complete, we can provide the operating budget impacts a little bit closer to those completion dates, which is why I kind of lean towards option 1. Although I was hesitant on the impact that would have on the rate stabilization account, because it would take almost a percent more than what option 2 does. And so where I ended up landing was back where Mayor was just pointing out on the emerging organizational levels. And we did, all of Mayor Council received a memo the other day, which the public probably haven't read, but it gave a little bit more understanding on page 454, the pink section there, of what's not recommended for funding, and specifically those 3 positions in the community social development area. And one thing that I took away from the memo that we received that wasn't really present at the finance meeting was that the senior management team have been able to make arrangements to pay the 2 current temporary positions for the next year and maintain that service, but not the third one. So let me, 2 more things to say. The position that I think, and I mentioned before, I think is the most important one to add to the budget is the Community Social Development Planner 1. The key thing in there is it's working with the most vulnerable people, most vulnerable populations, be that those impacted by the toxic drug supply, those who are homeless, those who are struggling to keep up with inflation, all of those aspects of the community that those vulnerable people rely on are seeing historic demands, food bank, for example. And for us not to help coordinate that position with a full-time permanent staff, I think is the wrong way to go today. Because think of this person, who they're working with. They're challenged by some of the, I don't think there's anyone in this room who would have that breadth of experience working with those who are so close to potential end. And we have a role as a city to provide these services. That's why staff have recommended some, and we already have existing ones. But these people, if they're not paid and appreciated, that they're brought into the fold, we could lose them. And the vulnerable people need that familiar face, the person who knows how to approach that person with their mental wellness at that time. And so to me, it's essential that we make room in the budget for this. And so I am going to ask for what I think is a simple amendment. And I know that at committee, we asked for the Steveston pool hours, and that was a 0.01% impact. And this one, as it's mentioned on this page, it would be a 0.06% impact. So what I would ask is that in our Finance Committee recommendations before us on the yellow pages, number 9, letter B, mentions emerging organizational levels, and in there it says we added Steveston Outdoor Pool. I would add that I would ask us for amendment that we add the Community Social Development Planner 1 for the 0.06% impact. But I would like to not add that on top of the 5.89%. Instead, I'd like to have that 0.06% taken away from the 1% transfer to reserves. So then the transfer to reserves would be the remainder, which is instead of 1.0, it would be 0.94% transfer to reserves. So no further impact other than we're putting that little bit less away to the reserves, but we've then brought in this position into the fold, and it's permanent going forward, and will address what needs to be done by staff's acknowledgement that this is a valuable position. We're going to fund it. We're going to probably get it eventually, but vulnerable people need it now.
So you're making a motion to amend to add on council page 454, number 3, which is the Community Social Development Planner 1, and reduce the 1% that goes to reserves by 0.06.
Correct.
That's your motion?
Yes.
Is it seconded? So that's moved and seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Put your hand up if you're wanting to speak on the amendment. Councillor Galanders.
Your Worship, I wanted to ask staff a question about, if we were to make any adjustments to the budget, such as an addition like this, that's going to make a 0.06% difference, but we want to keep our 5.89 as our maximum, is it more beneficial to adjust the 1% capital reserve transfer, or is it more beneficial to adjust the rate stabilization as far as long-term impacts?
Oh, no, just a minute. That's the question for us, as to which is better.
Oh, I thought it would be a question.
But rate stabilization, you're taking it out, basically, you're just taking a surplus amount out, and all you've got is a year. So
yeah, no, I'm just saying instead of
Councillor Wolf wants is a permanent position.
Yeah.
So you have to add it as an additional level.
Yes, but for the overall rate to stay the same, he was recommending that it come out of the 1%. It just seems like, based on our discussions last week at Finance Committee, nobody on this council was interested in talking about ever adjusting that 1%. For that case. So I was wondering if another way to do it is to increase the rate stabilization this year to 0.71% instead of 0.65, instead of the 1% being adjusted.
Does staff have any comment on that?
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, the 1% follows the council policy, which council is free to debate and decide whether they want to adopt it. The 1% is always better to keep going because it compounds and increases over time.
So in your opinion, it's best to keep the 1%, and if we wanted to keep the rate at 5.89 but add a position, we could possibly increase rate stabilization instead?
Well, through your worship to Councillor Galanders, I believe the memo and the position that Councillor Wolf is referring to is already funded as an auxiliary. There is one-time funding. So the position exists as a level of service for next year.
And it would be funded for the whole year, and then next year, when we look at the budget, we'd be able to look again if we want to add it as a permanent position?
That's correct. Anything that is not recommended in this budget, like Councillor Howe was talking about the one-times that weren't recommended, staff will bring it back again next year for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Who else on the amendment? Councillor Howe.
Yes, I want to ask staff a question. Now, the so-called tax impact on page 454 is 0.06%. But we know that there's a cumulative effect, right? So you employ a person, it's become a permanent position, and then I think the cost just add up. So this is not a one-time budget. So by increasing this tax impact this year, what will be the projection further down the road? How big can it grow to?
Through your worship to Councillor Howe, are you talking about the compounding increases? It depends on what we're looking at, and there's things such as collective agreements or things like that we'd have to go into close, but obviously it's not static, that amount. It would compound and increase over time.
Thank you. Yeah, this is exactly my concern, you compound and accumulate.
All right. So unless someone else wants to speak to the amendment, I'm going to call the question on it. Just to remind you, it is to add 0.06 for this one position and reduce the transfer to reserves accordingly by the same amount. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is defeated with Councillor Galanders, Au, McNulty, Liu, Hobbs, Heed, and the mayor opposed. Anything else, Councillor Wolf?
No, thanks.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just make a few comments on the budget. Obviously, we have to go through this many times to it, but it's interesting. I'm not in favor of the tax increase either, but I am in favor of living in Richmond, and I mentioned it in the last meeting that this budget, and thank you staff for your hard work on putting it together. It was not easy, and not everybody's pet peeve, if you wish, is in the budget. But it does meet the goals of our city, and it keeps it safe, it's vibrant and economic and viable and growing. And I think that's one that we have to have. Nobody wants to pay for taxes. However, I was encouraged tonight to have a unanimous approval on 131 million in capital. And now we have to pay for it. And it comes from this budget at 5.88. So I was really pleased, Your Worship, to see it happening. I heard we're losing value in our resources. Things should move up. It erodes our reserves. Yes, I support that 100%. Couldn't be better said on it. However, I'm not prepared to fall behind in the city and take criticism for not being able to deliver amenities to the people that they've enjoyed. We bragged tonight about the library. Where does it come from? It comes from 5.88 tonight, if we want it. If we want to cut, we can do it. We can cut staff. No problem, no disrespect staff. We can cut services. We can cut programs. We can fall behind, but I don't want to slow down the diking improvement. To me, that's important. I wanted to speed it up. I moved a resolution to speed it up from 50 years to 30, but was told that it was too rich. We can slow down our environmental sustainability and in the budget. It's in the budget. We can cut that tonight. We can slow down climate change and put that to one side. We can not have the circular city. We can save all kinds of things. But if we're going to move ahead, I think we've got to be leaders and handle the budget. The difference in each of the options is $18 overall for the year. Okay, it's not per month, it's an annual amount. So $18 is $1.50 a month to go from one to the other. Obviously, if we want all these things, and I do, and I'm very proud of everything that we've done in this city and haven't been involved in and everything that this council has done, I think there's not too many people that would necessarily complain about $1.50 a month to get what they want. So if we're going to not carry on with what we have, Your Worship, for a better community and all these initiatives that we're talking about, I'd like to see where the identification is to reduce. I have an open mind and I'd listen to it and find if we have it. Taxes are not good. Some of the budget and the items that are in it also depend upon funding benefits, such as grants and DCCs and those things that come from outside. If we take them out, we don't get this. Tonight, for example, in transportation, if we don't put the bike lane in that's 50% funded, we don't get a bike lane. We don't get the traffic light because it's funded a different way. And I think we have to step outside, see what is in here. And to me, there's a complete city within this budget. And I'm gonna support it, Your Worship. And I'm sure there'll probably be some opposition. Some members of council haven't voted for a budget for the last 8 years and supported it, but wanted all the benefits and stand up and brag about it. And I think we have to get to that. If somebody wants to put something forward on it, and I'm not saying that we have to have tax increases. The other thing, and I mentioned it at committee, and nobody picked up on it, but this is the budget to sustain us for now. Next year will be a new day. But we know next year with Metro Vancouver and ECOM, and no disrespect, RCMP and everything else, we need to get ourselves to a level where we can maintain ourselves because the worst is yet to come from those levels of government and the downloading that continually comes to this city. So I will be supporting the increase, Your Worship, and I don't want to belittle it in any way, shape, or form. I have tremendous respect for the taxpayer. I've worked hard over the many years to keep the budgets low, but this is a sustainable budget to keep this city safe in very, very difficult times.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Well, first of all, I do want to acknowledge all the work that was done by staff in preparing these reports. It's a very thorough analysis of the reserves, of all the other factors, worldwide factors that impact budgets all around the world, not just ours. So it was very well done and a lot of information, and I think that staff deserves to be acknowledged for that. Because the budget, and I remember saying something along this line last year, is what breathes life into everything else we do. Whether it's diking, whether it's roads, the budget is what allows us to do it. And so safety, parks, everything else depends on it. We have some challenges this year that we didn't have a few years ago, and that is inflation. Everybody knows it's running at a high that we haven't seen since the early 80s, and that's impacting everything as well. We've had COVID, we still do. We've got wars like in the Ukraine. Our supply chains have been affected. Our economy has been affected, and that's a worldwide thing. Inflation right now is running at about 7%. I think it was 6.9% so far for 2022. That's a lot more than the base increase that is recommended in this budget. I mentioned already that the consumer price index is about 3.98. The municipal price index is 4.75. And this report is recommending a same level of service budget of 3.22. That almost sounds too good to be true. But nobody is in favor of additional taxes, and nobody's really in favor of really high additional taxes either. But we must pass a budget and we must pass a balanced budget. It's different for cities than it is for provinces or the federal government. We have to do that. Now, the same level of service analysis, I do have a question of staff through your worship, and that is about page 407. And if you look at that, the cumulative CPI on that page is 19.8%, and the cumulative base budget is 8.9%. And I'd just like staff to explain, because it seems counterintuitive that we can actually be maintaining a same level of service when you have that large a disparity between those two numbers. So if you just comment on that.
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, some of the examples are in this year's budget. If you go to your CNCL 177, CNCL 248 and 249, those are 3 capital projects. There's efficiencies, so there's savings of about $160,000 in this year's budget. Item tonight that you approved was the TELUS negotiations. That brought about $150,000. That's in the budget. The additional levels, the ones that are funded on CNCL 451 through senior staff and through the General Manager of Planning and Development, we actually increased the revenues to offset the cost of those salaries. So within this budget, there's $1 million right there offsetting those increases. So things like that we do annually. Last year, if you recall, we brought in hybrid work to reduce the budget, $500,000. I believe the utility budget, same thing, where there were savings through fees and that in order to accommodate some of the staffing. Things like that, and through technology, we look for efficiencies, and that's the way we can bring about a same level of service that is below inflation.
Well, and I'll just say that's remarkable to be able to do that given the numbers, and it's important for the public and people listening to be able to hear explanations like that. And one other question would be the community safety costs being one of the largest drivers in the budget, and that comes in from the number I picked out of it was, I think, 5.38% combined. And if you could just comment on some of the factors that are driving that, which are also factors that are largely, if not entirely, out of our control.
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, one of the big factors was last year with the RCMP unionizing. So the increases are passed on to us. And also through, as Councillor Heed would attest to, is with Econ, they're increasing their staffing and labor and also with their systems. So all those costs are downloaded to us, to cities and municipalities. So it's hard to get around those costs.
Yes, it is. And so I just want to repeat a couple numbers that the mayor has already mentioned. But so when you look at the same level of service as 3.22, and if you look at the numbers that add up and get us to 5.89, the organizational additional costs of 0.28, if the 1% to reserves, the operational budget impact of 0.44, previous commitments council has made of 0.09, and we are using our stabilization fund to take all of that down by 0.65. And then you have the senior government charges, which has been already pointed out that we have no choice on. That's 1.51. So that takes us up now to 5.89. But it's just important to restate it a couple of times because it does impact everything we do. And I just want to ask one last question on the 1% reserve issue that we're dealing with and whether we put 1% to our reserves. And I know that comes up a lot, but with the capital building infrastructure reserve, which I think lists a number of projects in our report, and if you look at the past projects like Fire Hall number 1 and 3, bought the RCMP building, the active living at Minoru is another one, the City Center Community Center, the Hamilton Community Center, and I know there's a number of other projects that have been funded through that or partially funded through that, because we borrowed money. But when the city borrows money and makes payments on the money we borrow, we have a limit as to how much we can borrow, right? And that, I believe, is limited to 5% of our revenues, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, that's correct. Our approval-free liability limit, the servicing is 5% of your prior year's revenue. So that's approximately 22 million we're at approximately 14 million, so you have 8.5 million left. To
Right.
service 8.5 million, you're looking at a maximum borrowing of probably 65 million. So 65 million would not construct a lot of facilities in this day and
Right.
age.
For instance, the Stevenson Community Center is more than that. So the reason I mention that is because that money is tied directly to our reserves and what we can borrow. And so the 1% going into reserves, and I think former Councillor Steves was already quoted, so I'm going to paraphrase him as well. And that is when it comes to putting the money into the reserve, the 1%, he'd rather, give that money to us, so to speak, than have to borrow it from a bank and pay the bank. And so that's why I do support putting the 1% into the reserves, is because it allows us greater flexibility in doing a number of projects. Thank you. I think that's the end of my questions. For me anyway. Just one last comment to wrap up, and that is I'll be supporting the recommendation. And I think it's important that all of council vote in favor of the budget. I mean, it's fine to make amendments and try to make changes to it, as we've seen here tonight. I, in the past, have tried that myself. And, you're successful or you're not. But finding one small part of the budget or one aspect to the budget that you don't particularly like or that you didn't get included in it, and that's happened to me as well, doesn't mean that I'm going to vote against the entire budget because that amendment or one particular part did not go in my favor or didn't go the way I wanted it to. It's the bigger picture we have to look at. 3.22 as a same level of service budget, plus the additions we've all talked about, is a very reasonable budget given the circumstances and the times we are in right now. So I would just encourage everybody, try whatever amendments you want. We'll make changes. I have an open mind as well on it. And if I like something, I'll vote with you on it. But in the end, when it's all said and done, I think it's important that we all support our own budget, because the budget we're voting on is just a accumulated set of expenses and expenditures that we have all voted for the whole year along. And so have confidence in what we've done and support the budget, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. In the spirit of that, I would like to ask that 18C be voted on separately.
No.
But I'm making a motion that we remove 18C, which is the automatic 1%
No, we're not dividing it. It's the budget. It's the whole budget. That's a constituent part. You can ask to amend it and delete it, or whatever you want. But when we get to the end of the discussion, we're voting on the entire budget. We've been through that every year.
And previously, we have voted on that separately, and previously, we have reduced the 1%. I'm sure you remember, Mayor Brody. In fact, there was, I believe, one year we completely cut it out completely. So why could we not vote on taking that as a separate vote? 18.
You can move an amendment to delete it if you wish, or reduce it if you wish, or increase it if you wish.
Okay, then I'd just like to ask a question of staff. Is that 1% earmarked for anything in particular, or is it just going into reserves?
It's going into facility reserves.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the 1% goes into a pool of the reserves, and then there's obviously building projects that are then brought forward in your 5-year plan. If you go to your CNCL 284, 285, you'll see the list of building projects over the next 5 years. Over the next 4 years, there's $119 million in projects, just on building projects that would use this fund, the 1%.
I could spend the rest of the night talking about all those projects, but I'm not going to. My point is that we haven't earmarked it for everything that all of council, especially the new council, would necessarily agree to. So I don't know what the magic number is. I don't know if 1% is the magic number, or if it should be, earlier we had Councillor Wolf suggest that we get creative and reduce it by 0.06% for a specific item. And then later we had Councillor Galanders suggest that we take that money out of the rate stabilization, that 0.06%. So to vote on this, I believe this is a poor council policy, that the 1% should be optional, not automatic. And that's why I'm asking that we do it separately, because I feel like the budget overall is good. I obviously don't like that it's 5.89%, but, and what really concerns me is the cumulative effect. So if you go to the next item on the agenda, you know, in 2023, it's 5.88. In 2024, it's 5.37. In 2025, it's 4.68. This is the 5-year plan. And 2026 is 5%. It adds up to 25.85% over 5 years. And if we go at $115 extra per year, that's all it is this year, over 5 years, that's going to be closer to $600 for the average household that happens to live in a $1.2 million home. Many of us live in houses worth a lot more than that, so then it would be higher. So what I'm concerned with is we're on autopilot here, and that isn't the way to do things. When you have a senior living in a condo, and they've got strata fees going up, they've got insurance costs going up, and now they've got a big tax bill that's going up. Depend on it every year into the future. That's why I feel that the 1%, and we have argued this many, many times, and I understand that not everybody agrees with me, but if it was earmarked, as Mr. Chong just said, it's just going to go in the pot. And we know we'll need it eventually, and I agree that we should have extra, but it shouldn't be automatic. And so I would ask, you know, staff and all of us to sharpen our pencil and see if we can't find ways, like maybe we don't spend, you know, a ton of $5 million on a clubhouse or $12 million on a bike lane. I mean, there are options, things that we can do potentially cheaper. So if,
Counselor.
you're forcing me again and again.
Counselor, when you misstate the situation, I have to correct it. This is not automatic. It is the policy that we put the 1% into the proposed budget. It is a policy. It can be varied by council at any time. So therefore, the policy itself or the application of the policy in any year, as I say. If you don't like it, make a motion to delete it this year. That's why we say it's a policy. Secondly, you say it's not earmarked. It's earmarked for facilities. To get to facilities, we have to vote on those facilities. So it is called the democratic process. It will be the majority of council would decide how to apply those funds.
And so it'll be added to the 74 million in spoken for reserves. And it's like there's 1.2 billion in reserves altogether, but much of that is spoken for. So this is what I'm uncomfortable with.
This is spoken for. It's for facilities.
But not
Can we decide to use that for something else?
Through your worship, no, that's for specifically for facilities, infrastructure. I would just like to point out to Councillor Day that on your FIN 288, there are building projects that are not recommended due to insufficient funding, this reserve. And that's another reason for the 1%. If you look on your FIN 288, there's 29 million in building projects that cannot be accommodated.
Always something. Well, I guess I'm not going to fight this battle again. I'll support the budget.
Councillor Au.
I want staff to stay. I have a question. So what is the estimate surplus for 2022?
Through your worship, Councillor Au, we have not closed the books for year end at this point in time. And
what's the rough estimate?
The rough estimate? Well, keep in mind that you need 7.3 million to pay the Stevenson debt. An additional 7.3, so it's probably roughly in the $4 million range.
So has it been consistently in that range, $3 to $4 million?
It depends, Councillor Au. It depends on the circumstances. In the COVID years, there was we were had a little bit more due to the fact that operations were closed.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for the information. Well, as I have expressed it in the Finance Committee meeting, I'm not going to support option 2. I'm in favor of option 1 for the reasons that has been expressed by many of us, such as inflation and, the increase of insurance, travel fees for many people. Now, option 1 is not actually about cutting service. I have to emphasize that. If you look at the comparison, basically, the difference is that we use the rate stabilization fund to offset the increase. So there's no cutting in the same level of service. So it's not about cutting. Secondly, I think the difference is that we use rate stabilization fund for its purpose. Rate stabilization fund is supposed to stabilize the rate increase. It's what it has to be. So what I don't like to see in the past is that we have this rate stabilization fund keeping the surplus of the previous year, and then in the mid-year, staff will come up with a project saying that this is a worthwhile project, and there's no tax impact because we have the rate stabilization fund. So for this year, we can use the rate stabilization fund to pay for this increase. But don't forget that next year, in the next budget, it becomes part of the same level of service. Again, we have discussed about the accumulative effect. So instead of using the rate stabilization fund in the mid-year to do something new and build it into the budget for the next year, I rather use the rate stabilization fund now to offset the increase. Ideally, I think we should have the budget after the term goal for this new term of council be set, because we might change the priorities in the past. So we may not do the same thing as we did before. So ideally, because this is a new council, we should have that kind of priorities being set before we talk about the budget. However, I realize that this is transition, right? We cannot have even the workshop until January. So I'm rather be more conservative, saying that we don't do too much to commit ourselves in the future, so that we don't have much room to move around. Now, I'm too familiar with the argument, saying that this is only a few dollars increase for each month. But the fact is, our people have only one income. So every dollar counts. So if we increase a few dollars here, a few dollars there, at the end, it's a huge increase for some people. And I also understand that many of the courses are being downloaded to us from the other levels of government or other institutions. I get that. However, I think we should do our best to control what we can control. So that's why I'm not arguing that we should fight with the WCB rate increase or the Canadian Pension Plan enhancement, things like that. And finally, I want to point out that a huge part of this increase is due to the increase of cost in policing. So on CNCL 409, we noticed that the increase of our CMP contract is in the range of 31%. And also, on the next page, 412, we noticed that the tax impact of the RCMP unionization was 0.35%. Arguably, we can say that this is something we have no control. Again, this is something downloaded to us. However, I want to remind or to repeat again, we make the decision in 2021 to employ 16 more RCMP officers, knowing that there will be a cost impact in the future. And now we are saying that, we cannot do anything because this is being imposed upon us. So that's why I'm saying that we have to be very cautious in increasing anything, because there's a long-term effect in the future. So with that, I'm not going to support the motion. As I said, I'll be in favor of motion option 1, but I know that I won't get enough support.
Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I I'm going to support the budget and the option 2. I just want to make some comments, and I have a question. First of all, when it comes to the rate stabilization, I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but I believe what we heard in finance last week was that if we use any more than what we're using now, like if we went with option 1, then we might not have sufficient rate stabilization for when things are really, really out of our control, whereas this year 5.89 isn't great, but it's still fairly manageable and reasonable, and we still have our taxes quite low compared to other municipalities. So I like keeping that fund healthy. I really appreciate Councillor Day, questioning the 1% and trying to keep taxes low and trying to see if we really need to keep adding funds for our facilities. And I'd like to argue that it is automatic in the sense that this is our policy, is that we have the 1%, and when we get the options that we vote on, so options 1, 2, or 3, there's never an option provided by staff to not have that 1% in there, whereas they do provide options for different uses of the rate stabilization. And so I think it's asking a lot for if a council wants to question the 1% for this year, for example, to just delete it out of the item. So let's delete C and remove that 2.68 million out of there. Then we'd have to redo all the math on option 2 to see what that would end up looking like without it. And I think it would be, perhaps if it actually truly isn't automatic, then maybe in future years staff can come with an option 4 that has, if we only use this year our reserves are really healthy, we recommend, or there's an option to only use 0.5% this year and see what that looks like, just so that we have the option to discuss it without having to delete it off the agenda. But that being said, with the reserves are as they are, I see that we approved as a council like $130 million capital spending budget for this year, and for the next 5 years it looks like we're going to spend 130 million every year, and there's only 74 million right now that's unallocated for, and we're only going to be transferring 2.7 million into that. And we'll be getting interest on that money, so it's going to continue to grow and have cumulative benefits over the next 5 years. And we're going to be transferring money from that reserves into next year's capital plans. And if we keep going the way we're going, 130 million a year, we're going to need it. So I think that if we don't want to keep adding to that fund, then we need to go back to when we're discussing the capital budgets and say, hey, like, we really need to spend a little less on our facilities. Let's trim it down and not spend that much, and then we might not need as much in our reserves. But we do approve the capital budget, and our staff says we need to keep adding to it with this 1%. And I know that other municipalities have a 1% facilities tax as well. So I can agree with that. And I just want to comment on the position, and I appreciate the memorandum about the position for the social development planner. And if we didn't have this memo stating that this position is fully funded for this year, I would have supported Councillor Wolf's amendment, because I just really think it's important to so that everybody knows that we are valuing the people that need our help the most, just as much as we are valuing our shiny buildings. But we are doing that this year with this position, so I am happy with that and looking at it next year. I just have one question. I don't know if this is of staff or of council, but I'm curious as to why we do our operating budget before we get our property assessments at the end of the year, because I'm thinking we're assuming what the property values are going to be, and then we have our taxation rate on that. But what if there was a huge drop that we didn't know was coming, and then we would actually have needed to have more? I know that, and the other way around. No.
You want to talk about
Don't get into this.
Through the mayor to Councillor Galanders. The community charter requires that we must have an adopted budget before we can take a tax rate bylaw forward. So with the fact that we adjust our tax rates based on the total assessment values that we get, so we can't, again, as it was mentioned before, we can't over-collect. We must adjust our tax rates every year based on what the assessment values are for all the properties. So if assessment values go up, we drop our tax rates.
When do you do that then? In January?
We do that in March.
Or in March when you're making the tax bills?
March,
Okay.
April.
Oh, that
yes.
makes sense. Okay, thank you.
So if we take our budget forward later on, say in March, we don't really have a lot of time, and usually council doesn't have the amount of time needed to debate issues, because we need to have that tax rate bylaw passed by May 15th every year.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship.
There you go.
I really appreciate the work staff has done here, because I know that there's a lot going on. We've seen, actually, when we're working on the budget for the last number of years, we've known what our numbers are going to be as we move forward, because we know our operating budget impacts of new community centers, of extra community centers that we have, of new park spaces that we have, of all these different things that we're adding into our community. We all went door knocking this year. We all heard from people. They want the lawns cut. They want the pools open. They want more usable park space. They want us to address the drainage issues in their parks when it rains and they're up to their ankles in mud and they can't be used. They want the arts facilities open and operating. They want their lawn bowling facility. They want their curling space. They want to play soccer and baseball and many more things. The senior center, they appreciated it opening up after COVID. We want a space for everyone, places for people to connect, to recreate, to enjoy their life. Personally, I would support a 2% to reserves. I think we need that more usable park space. We need more bike lanes. We need more secure bike parking. You know, it breaks my heart to hear about some kid with a part-time job coming out and his bike's not there after his shift washing dishes at one of the local restaurants. You know, here's an opportunity for someone to gain confidence. They're gaining autonomy. They're developing their financial literacy with their own hard-earned dollars. And they come out and now their bike's not there. So now guess what? Mom and dad have to drive them to work. Oh, now maybe they can't have a job because half the time they live with dad and dad works late and they can't make it work. So it's not okay that we don't have these things. We want our community centers open. We want our heritage spaces invested in and improved. We want all these things. What we're doing is we're keeping it as small as we can to make it work so that we can actually spread it out as much as we can. I think we probably heard from everyone that if they were to spend any more money on something, for sure it would be dike infrastructure. I think we heard that from a lot of people, but we're pacing our dike infrastructure also because there's only so much design work you can do in a year and so much building work you can do in a year and so much riprap you can drag into the city of Richmond over through the George Massey Tunnel. I think there's a ton of people who'd like a new Hugh Boyd field house. I'm probably not the only one that had a kid pee themselves running around trying to, find a bathroom because they were too little to go by themselves or something or whatever else happened. We couldn't add more snow removal on our multi-use paths and on our bike lanes because we're trying to keep the budget down. So we're doing all these things trying to keep it down, and this is where we've landed. We're still putting the 1% in so that we can have the pool, so we can have all the things that we do have. Insurance is going up, and that's why we need to do other things when we look at our OCP, like encourage things like row houses where people aren't in a strata, and so the strata is not being hit by crazy insurance rates. Now you have your own separate house, you're not stratified, and now you have something separate, and you're not being hit with those same insurance rates. I don't know how other people run their households, but I prefer to save where I can and when I can, and with the money left over, I can take advantage of good opportunities. So, it was mentioned about our rate stabilization fund. Well, those are what we saved our money on. We didn't go out to dinner that extra time last year, or something happened that we didn't spend the money on. Well, in my experience, when staff comes forward with a new mid-year project and it's not going to have a tax impact, well, it's because we saved that money. And usually, almost always actually, there's a grant funding available that goes with it. When they come forward and they say, here, we got a little bit of money in the bank because we saved last year. So instead of spending it right now, we're saving it, and we can take advantage of those social, those environmental, those other projects that we can. There's funding through places like UBCM, FCM, TransLink, ICBC, the federal and provincial governments. There's so many of these opportunities that we're able to take advantage of because we don't milk our fund down to zero and spend all of our money. We save, we put it away, we build our community centers, we build our facilities. 1%, the tax impact, yeah, it's $18. Yeah, what if it was $36? Maybe we'd get that Hugh Boyd Fieldhouse that little bit sooner. Maybe we should think about that. But here we are. This is what we're looking at. I'm going to support this. And, I know it's tough for a lot of people. I know not everybody has increasing abilities to pay for things. I do know that there are opportunities for some people to take advantage of the tax deferrals. And I know not everyone likes to do it. Certainly my parents don't like to do it, and many people in that age group don't like to do it. But when interest rates are 5%, or at least 3% in a GIC you can get right now, but they're only going to charge you 1% on your tax deferral, you're making money on the government. You should do that. If you can do that, you should go ahead and do that. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, I'm going to call the question then on the operating budget. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councillor Au opposed. Brings us to the 5-year financial plan. It's set out in the agenda. Staff recommends that the consolidated 5-year financial plan 2023 to 27 and the bylaw be introduced and given first, second, and third reading. And secondly, that staff undertake a process of public consultation in accordance with section 166 of the community charter, and I would so move.
Second.
So that's moved and that is seconded. This really builds upon the operating budget that we just talked about, and it shows at least the plan for where we're going for the next 5 years. With this, staff will go out to the public. We'll have input in various ways and meetings with the public to see what they have to say. So with that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councillor Au opposed. Brings us to public announcements. We've got a bunch of appointments. These all go to December 31st, 2024. For the Aquatic Advisory Board, we've got Maureen Hooper, Karen Novor Pizzuto, Nicole Spada, Alexei Babarev, and Bonnie Tudor. Community Center for Active Living Program Committee, again, till December 31st, 2024, is Stuart Corrigal, Alero Galano, Henry Bay, Christina Sequeira. To the Economic Advisory Committee, Greg Allen, Nigel Evans, I think that's Carl Lee, Melanie Rupp, and Paul Tilbury. And Paul Tilbury has been reappointed as the chair. To the YVR Aeronautical Noise Management Committee for a 2-year term is Howard Jampolsky. To the Advisory Committee on the Environment, Spencer Peters, Stephanie Snopek, Stephanie C., Olivia Hui, and Helen Maliki. Then to the Child Care Development Advisory Committee, Kevin Cheng, Tanya Lam, Diana Ma, Chantel Pereira, William Sai, Ilana Van Veen, Joyce Lynn, Harinder Mali, and Vadrana Tomik. And finally, to the Seniors Advisory Committee, Penny Chan, Frank Dale, Sandra Gebhardt, Nina Graham, Diana Liang, Mumtaz Matthew, Yasmin Rahman, Tiong Sin Kwek, David Richardson, and Janice Wessel. Then I've just got a couple more announcements. First of all, for the winter break activities, there's going to be lots of opportunities to take in winter activities with family and friends across the city. So To give you examples, we got the festive lights in the Stevenson Village and at City Hall right here. Winter Wonderland, public skating at Minaroo Arena, and a Santa workshop at South Arm Community Center. And there's lots of other fun activities, so go for details to richmond.ca winter break /winter break. Then we have the Richmond Art Gallery exhibit, and the Art Gallery invites you to visit its newest exhibit by renowned Canadian artist Derek Liddington, curated by Anne-Marie Saint-Jean-Aubray from Quebec's Joliet Art Museum. The exhibit challenges the audience's perception and relationship with nature. It runs free till January 15th, and go to the artgallery.org website for more. And finally, I want to wish happy Hanukkah to all those who celebrate Hanukkah. Sunday marks the beginning of the 8 days of Hanukkah. This is an important Jewish festival of light. It's marked by the lighting of a menorah and other examples of the rich cultural heritage and diversity that we embrace in Richmond. So happy Hanukkah to those who celebrate. With that, Development Permit Panel.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are two recommendations for council. Recommendation 1, that the chair's report for the Development Permit Panel meeting held on November 16th, 2022 be received for information. And recommendation 2, that the recommendations of the panel to authorize the issuance of a development variance permit for the property at 11251 Clipper Court be endorsed and the permit so issued.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So, thank you. We are now adjourned.